Question 1. The risk matrix shows a high probability of stakeholder dissatisfaction if the team consistently fails to deliver a done increment at the end of each sprint. During the current sprint, the team has completed the development of several features, but a significant portion of the planned testing for these features remains outstanding due to time constraints. The product owner is eager to demonstrate progress and is suggesting that the increment be considered done for the purpose of the sprint review, with the understanding that testing will be completed in the next sprint. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Agile tester? Option A. Advocate for the increment to be considered done only after all planned testing for the sprint selected product backlog items has been successfully completed and meets the definition of done. Option B. Agree to consider the increment done for the sprint review, as the product owner has requested, to manage stakeholder expectations regarding demonstrated progress. Option C. Suggest that the product owner update the product backlog to reflect that the current sprint's increment is only partially tested to maintain transparency. Option D. Proceed with demonstrating the developed features in the sprint review, and then immediately create new product backlog items for the outstanding testing tasks to be prioritized in future sprints. Correct answer is A. Advocate for the increment to be considered done only after all planned testing for the sprint selected product backlog items has been successfully completed and meets the definition of done. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires the tester to balance the immediate need for a demonstrable working increment with the long-term integrity and clarity of the product backlog. The pressure to deliver a tangible outcome can lead to shortcuts that compromise the foundational elements of Agile development, potentially impacting future planning, stakeholder trust, and regulatory compliance if traceability is a concern. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the increment is not only functional, but also accurately reflects the agreed-upon scope and quality standards, and that the product backlog remains a reliable source of truth. Correct approach involves ensuring that the sprint backlog items selected for the increment are fully done, according to the agreed-upon definition of done. This means that all testing, documentation, and integration activities associated with those items are completed. The resulting increment is then a potentially shippable product that accurately reflects the work completed within the sprint and aligns with the product owner's priorities as represented in the product backlog. This approach upholds the principle of transparency by ensuring that what is declared done is truly complete, and that the product backlog remains a clear and accurate representation of the product's evolution. From a regulatory perspective, maintaining accurate and traceable records of completed work and its alignment with requirements is crucial for auditability and compliance, especially in regulated industries. An incorrect approach would be to declare an increment done when testing is incomplete or only partially performed, even if the functionality appears to be working. This creates a false sense of progress and can lead to the introduction of defects into the product, which may have significant consequences if not identified and rectified. Ethically, this misrepresents the team's progress to stakeholders and undermines the trust placed in the testing process. Another incorrect approach is to inflate the product backlog with items that are not genuinely prioritized or are placeholders for future work that has not been clearly defined. This pollutes the product backlog, making it difficult for the product owner to effectively manage priorities and for the team to plan future sprints. This lack of clarity can lead to misinterpretations of scope and requirements, potentially causing compliance issues if specific regulatory requirements are not adequately addressed or tracked. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a commitment to the Agile principles of transparency, inspection, and adaptation, coupled with an understanding of the potential regulatory implications of incomplete or misrepresented work. Testers should advocate for adherence to the definition of done and ensure that the product backlog is a living, accurate document. When faced with pressure to compromise, professionals should clearly articulate the risks associated with such compromises, referencing the potential impact on product quality, stakeholder confidence, and regulatory compliance. Question 2. When evaluating the product owner's suggestion to solely use test-driven development (TDD) for defining all acceptance criteria and guiding development, which Agile testing principle best addresses the need for shared understanding of behavior and verifiable business outcomes from a stakeholder perspective? Option A. Exploratory testing. Option B. Behavior-driven development (BDD). Option C. Test-driven development (TDD). Option D. Continuous testing. The correct answer is B, behavior-driven development BDD. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the product owner, while aiming for efficiency, is conflating the distinct purposes and benefits of TDD and BDD within an agile testing framework. Misunderstanding these principles can lead to ineffective testing strategies, reduced collaboration, and ultimately, a product that doesn't meet stakeholder expectations or regulatory compliance. Careful judgment is required to guide the team towards the appropriate application of these methodologies. The correct approach involves advocating for the use of behavior-driven development (BDD) for defining acceptance criteria and guiding development, and test-driven development (TDD) for the lower-level unit testing. BDD, with its focus on observable behavior and shared understanding through scenarios written in a common language, directly addresses the product owner's need for clear, verifiable requirements that align with business value. This approach fosters collaboration between business stakeholders, developers, and testers, ensuring that the software being built meets the intended functionality from a user's perspective. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, BDD promotes transparency and traceability of requirements, which is crucial for demonstrating compliance and accountability, especially in regulated industries. It ensures that the what and why of the software are clearly understood and tested against. An incorrect approach would be to exclusively adopt test-driven development (TDD) for all testing needs, including acceptance criteria. While TDD is excellent for ensuring code quality and correctness at the unit level, it doesn't inherently provide the shared understanding of behavior that BDD offers. Relying solely on TDD for acceptance criteria can lead to a disconnect between the technical implementation and the actual business needs, potentially resulting in software that passes tests but doesn't deliver the desired business outcomes. This can create ethical concerns regarding delivering value and regulatory risks if the software's behavior deviates from implicit or explicit stakeholder expectations. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the need for formal testing methodologies like TDD and BDD in favor of ad hoc testing, believing that the product owner's direct involvement is sufficient. This ignores the fundamental principles of agile testing, which emphasize building quality in from the start. Ad hoc testing is often reactive and can lead to missed defects, increased rework, and a lack of confidence in the product's stability and compliance. Ethically, this approach fails to uphold the professional responsibility to deliver a robust and reliable product. It also poses significant regulatory risks, as it becomes difficult to demonstrate due diligence and quality assurance. A further incorrect approach would be to implement continuous testing without clearly defined and agreed-upon testing strategies like TDD and BDD. Continuous testing is a practice that aims to execute tests as early and as often as possible in the development lifecycle. However, without the foundational principles of TDD and BDD to guide what is being tested and why, continuous testing can become a process of running many tests without a clear understanding of their purpose or coverage of business requirements. This can lead to a false sense of security and potentially overlook critical behavioral aspects, creating ethical and regulatory vulnerabilities. The professional reasoning process for similar situations involves 1. Understanding the core problem. Identify the underlying misunderstanding or misapplication of agile testing principles. 2. Clarifying principles. Educate stakeholders on the distinct roles and benefits of TDD, BDD, and continuous testing. 3. Recommending a tailored approach. Suggest a combination of methodologies that best addresses the specific needs of the project and the product owner's goals, emphasizing BDD for behavior and acceptance, TDD for unit-level robustness, and continuous testing to integrate these practices throughout the lifecycle. 4. Focusing on value and compliance. Frame recommendations in terms of delivering business value, reducing risk, and ensuring regulatory adherence. Question 3. The assessment process reveals that the Agile team's historical velocity has varied significantly over the past few sprints, with some sprints showing higher output than others. The product owner is requesting a forecast for the upcoming release, and the tester is tasked with providing input on the team's capacity. Which approach best utilizes the team's velocity data for planning in accordance with Agile principles and ethical testing standards? Option A. Solely use the highest recorded velocity from a particularly productive sprint to set aggressive targets for the upcoming release. Option B. Use the lowest recorded velocity to ensure no commitments are missed, even if it means underutilizing the team's potential. Option C. Disregard the velocity data entirely and rely on the product owner's intuition for release planning. Option D. Use the average historical velocity, acknowledging its variability, and discussing potential risks and opportunities with the team and product owner. Correct answer is D. Use the average historical velocity, acknowledging its variability, and discussing potential risks and opportunities with the team and product owner. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a tester to balance the need for accurate forecasting with the potential for misinterpretation and misuse of velocity data. The Certified Agile Tester (CAT) framework emphasizes ethical conduct and adherence to best practices, which includes ensuring that metrics are used constructively and not punitively. Misrepresenting or misusing velocity can lead to unrealistic expectations, team burnout, and a breakdown of trust, all of which are contrary to Agile principles and ethical testing standards. The correct approach involves using historical velocity as a guide for future planning, acknowledging its inherent variability, and focusing on trends rather than absolute predictions. This aligns with the CAT's emphasis on continuous improvement and data-informed decision-making. By understanding that velocity is an indicator of team capacity and output over a period, and by communicating its limitations, the tester upholds professional integrity. This approach supports realistic sprint planning and helps the team to self-organize effectively, fostering a sustainable pace and a focus on delivering value. An incorrect approach that relies solely on the highest historical velocity for planning fails to account for the natural fluctuations in team output. This can lead to overcommitment in sprints, setting the team up for failure and demotivation. Ethically, this is problematic as it creates an environment where the team is pressured to achieve an unsustainable pace, potentially compromising quality and well-being. Another incorrect approach that uses the lowest historical velocity for planning, while seemingly cautious, can lead to underestimation of the team's capabilities and missed opportunities for delivering value. This can stifle innovation and create a perception of inefficiency, which is not conducive to agile development and can be seen as a failure to accurately represent the team's potential. A third incorrect approach that ignores velocity data entirely and relies on gut feeling or external pressure for planning is also professionally unsound. This disregards the empirical evidence gathered by the team and can lead to arbitrary and unrealistic commitments. It undermines the principles of data-driven decision-making and transparency that are central to Agile methodologies and the CAT framework. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the purpose of the metric velocity to inform, not dictate. 2. Gathering and analyzing historical data, looking for trends and understanding variability. 3. Communicating the findings and limitations of the data to the team and stakeholders. 4. Collaborating with the team to make informed decisions about sprint commitments, considering factors beyond just velocity. 5. Continuously inspecting and adapting the process based on feedback and observed outcomes. Question 4. Analysis of a situation where a certified Agile tester CAT is working on a time-sensitive project with a rapidly evolving backlog. The sprint is nearing its end, and the team is under pressure to deliver a potentially shippable increment. The tester has identified several critical defects that, if not addressed, could impact user experience and data integrity. However, addressing these defects would require significant rework and potentially delay the sprint's completion. The tester must decide on the most appropriate course of action to uphold professional standards and Agile principles. Option A. Focus solely on automated regression testing to ensure existing functionality remains stable and postpone manual exploratory testing of new features until the next sprint. Option B. Document the critical defects thoroughly, communicate their impact to the product owner and development team, and collaboratively decide on the best course of action, which may involve prioritizing fixes for the current sprint or planning for their immediate resolution in the next. Option C. Immediately halt all further development and testing to focus exclusively on fixing the identified critical defects, regardless of the impact on the sprint timeline. Option D. Prioritize the immediate delivery of the increment by deferring the reporting of critical defects to the next sprint, focusing only on minor cosmetic issues for the current sprint. The correct answer is D. Prioritize the immediate delivery of the increment by deferring the reporting of critical defects to the next sprint, focusing only on minor cosmetic issues for the current sprint. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires the Agile tester to balance the rapid pace of Agile development with the fundamental need for robust, compliant testing practices, all within the specific regulatory framework of the Certified Agile Tester (CAT) exam. The challenge lies in identifying and implementing testing approaches that not only meet the immediate needs of the sprint, but also adhere to the overarching principles of quality and regulatory compliance expected in a professional testing role. Careful judgment is required to avoid shortcuts that could compromise product integrity or lead to regulatory noncompliance. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integration of testing activities throughout the sprint, focusing on early defect detection and continuous feedback. This aligns with the Agile Manifesto's emphasis on working software and responding to change, while also adhering to the CAT's implied commitment to quality and professional standards. Specifically, this approach ensures that testing is not an afterthought but a core component of the development lifecycle, enabling the team to deliver a product that is not only functional, but also meets the quality expectations inherent in professional software development. Regulatory adherence in this context means ensuring that the testing processes themselves are transparent, repeatable, and contribute to the overall assurance of product quality, which is a foundational ethical and professional responsibility. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on functional testing, without considering non-functional requirements or security implications, would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a narrow interpretation of working software that overlooks critical aspects of product quality and user safety, potentially leading to significant business and reputational damage. Furthermore, neglecting to document test results or deviations from expected behavior would violate principles of professional accountability and transparency, making it difficult to demonstrate due diligence and potentially hindering future audits or investigations. Another incorrect approach that involves deferring all testing to the end of the sprint or release cycle is fundamentally at odds with Agile principles and professional best practices. This creates a bottleneck, increases the risk of late-stage, costly defect discovery, and undermines the team's ability to respond to feedback effectively. Ethically, it represents a failure to uphold the responsibility of delivering a quality product in a timely and efficient manner. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the Agile sprint goals, the product's requirements, both functional and non-functional, and any relevant industry or regulatory standards. Testers should advocate for the integration of testing activities from the outset, collaborate closely with developers and product owners, and ensure that testing strategies are comprehensive and risk-based. When faced with time constraints, the focus should be on risk mitigation and prioritizing tests that provide the most value and assurance, rather than abandoning essential quality assurance practices. Question 5. Governance review demonstrates that the Agile team's sprint commitments have been consistently missed, leading to stakeholder dissatisfaction. The team is currently using a mix of estimation techniques, with some user stories estimated by individual developers and others using broad t-shirt sizing without further refinement. The review recommends a more standardized and collaborative approach to estimation to improve predictability and build stakeholder confidence. Which of the following estimation techniques, when implemented collaboratively by the entire Agile team, best addresses the governance review's findings and promotes accurate forecasting? Option A, planning poker, where the entire team discusses each user story and uses cards to assign relative effort and complexity. Option B, t-shirt sizing applied broadly to the entire product backlog without subsequent detailed estimation. Option C, estimation based on the perceived urgency of the user story as determined by the product owner. Option D, individual developer estimations based on their personal experience with similar tasks. The correct answer is A, planning poker, where the entire team discusses each user story and uses cards to assign relative effort and complexity. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in Agile testing environments where estimation accuracy directly impacts project timelines, resource allocation, and stakeholder expectations. The professional challenge lies in selecting and applying an estimation technique that is not only effective for the Agile team, but also aligns with the governance and oversight requirements of the organization. Misjudging the complexity or effort can lead to significant downstream consequences, including missed deadlines, budget overruns, and erosion of trust with stakeholders. Careful judgment, is required to balance the flexibility of Agile with the need for predictable outcomes and accountability. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves using planning poker, a consensus-based technique that leverages the collective knowledge of the entire Agile team. This method encourages discussion and debate about the complexity, effort, and uncertainty associated with a user story, leading to a more robust and shared understanding. Planning poker is particularly effective in Agile settings because it promotes collaboration and ensures that all team members, including testers, developers, and product owners, contribute to the estimation. This shared ownership fosters accountability and improves the accuracy of estimates over time. From a governance perspective, planning poker provides a transparent and auditable process for estimation, as the discussions and rationale behind the chosen story points are implicitly captured through team consensus. This aligns with principles of good governance that emphasize transparency and informed decision-making. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is relying solely on the most senior developer's estimation. This fails to leverage the diverse perspectives and specialized knowledge of the entire team, particularly the testing perspective, which is crucial for identifying potential risks and complexities. It also creates a single point of failure and can lead to biased estimates that do not reflect the true effort required. Ethically, this approach can undermine team collaboration and create an environment where junior members feel their input is not valued. Another incorrect approach is using t-shirt sizing for all user stories without further refinement. While t-shirt sizing can be useful for initial, high-level backlog grooming, it lacks the granularity needed for effective sprint planning and commitment. It does not provide sufficient detail for the team to commit to delivering specific work within a sprint, potentially leading to overcommitment or undercommitment. This can create governance issues related to predictability and the ability to track progress against defined goals. A third incorrect approach is assigning story points based on individual developer preference without team discussion. This negates the core benefit of story points, which is to represent relative complexity and effort as understood by the whole team. It can lead to inconsistent estimations and a lack of shared understanding, making it difficult to forecast velocity and manage stakeholder expectations. This approach lacks the transparency and collaborative spirit required for effective Agile governance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes collaborative estimation techniques that foster shared understanding and accountability. When faced with estimation, the first step is to ensure the chosen technique aligns with the team's Agile maturity and the organization's governance requirements. Planning poker, with its emphasis on team consensus and discussion, is generally the most suitable for Agile teams seeking accurate and defensible estimates. If initial high-level sizing is needed, t-shirt sizing can be a starting point, but it must be followed by more detailed estimation techniques like planning poker before sprint commitments are made. The key is to involve the entire cross-functional team in the estimation process to capture all relevant perspectives and risks, thereby ensuring both technical accuracy and adherence to governance principles of transparency and accountability. Question 6. Stakeholder feedback indicates that while the team is successfully delivering features rapidly using Scrum, there are concerns about the thoroughness of testing and the ability to demonstrate compliance with industry regulations at each iteration. The team is struggling to integrate comprehensive quality assurance activities within the short sprint cycles. Which of the following approaches best addresses this challenge while adhering to Agile principles and regulatory expectations? Option A. Implement a dedicated testing sprint after several development sprints to perform comprehensive regression and compliance testing. Option B. Reduce the scope of testing within each sprint to focus solely on critical path functionality, deferring less critical testing to a later stage. Option C. Outsource all testing activities to a separate team that operates on a different timeline, independent of the development sprints. Option D. Enhance the definition of done to include specific, measurable quality criteria and require all testing activities, including unit, integration, and acceptance testing, to be completed within each sprint. The correct answer is A. Implement a dedicated testing sprint after several development sprints to perform comprehensive regression and compliance testing. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in Agile development where the rapid pace of iteration clashes with the need for robust, auditable quality assurance processes. The professional challenge lies in balancing the flexibility and speed of Agile methodologies with the regulatory requirements for demonstrable quality and compliance, particularly within a regulated industry. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen Agile framework and its implementation do not inadvertently create compliance gaps or compromise the integrity of the testing process. The correct approach involves integrating quality assurance activities directly into the Agile workflow, ensuring that testing is not an afterthought but a continuous, collaborative effort. This aligns with the principles of Agile development, emphasizing early and frequent delivery of high-quality software. Specifically, adopting a framework like Scrum with well-defined testing roles within the sprint, or Kanban with visual cues for quality gates, ensures that testing is performed iteratively and that feedback loops are short. This continuous testing and integration approach helps to identify and address defects early, reducing the cost of remediation and ensuring that the product meets defined quality standards and regulatory requirements. The regulatory justification stems from the need to demonstrate due diligence in quality control and risk management throughout the development lifecycle, which is facilitated by embedding testing within the Agile process. An incorrect approach would be to isolate testing activities at the end of development cycles or sprints, treating them as a separate phase. This creates a bottleneck, delays feedback, and increases the risk of significant defects being discovered late, potentially leading to costly rework and missed deadlines. From a regulatory perspective, this waterfall-like testing phase within an Agile context can make it difficult to demonstrate continuous quality assurance and can be seen as a failure to proactively manage quality risks. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of delivery over thoroughness of testing, leading to shortcuts in test case design, execution, or documentation. This can result in a product that, while delivered quickly, may not meet the required quality standards or regulatory obligations. The ethical failure here is a lack of professional responsibility to deliver a fit-for-purpose and compliant product. A further incorrect approach is to adopt an Agile framework without adequate training or understanding of how to integrate quality assurance effectively. This can lead to ad hoc testing practices that are inconsistent, difficult to track, and do not provide the necessary evidence for regulatory compliance. The professional failure is in implementing a methodology without ensuring the team has the necessary skills and understanding to apply it correctly and compliantly. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the specific Agile framework being used, the regulatory requirements applicable to the product or service, and the team's capabilities. It requires proactive planning to embed quality assurance activities throughout the development lifecycle, fostering collaboration between developers, testers, and stakeholders, and establishing clear metrics for quality and compliance that are monitored continuously. Question 7. Research into the implementation of test automation within an Agile development team has revealed a strong push from the product owner to automate all test cases immediately to accelerate release cycles and reduce costs. The team is working on a product subject to stringent regulatory compliance requirements. Considering the Certified Agile Tester (CAT) framework and its emphasis on quality and compliance, what is the most prudent strategy for the test automation lead to propose? Option A. Suggest automating only the most superficial and easily automatable test cases as a demonstration of progress, while acknowledging that comprehensive regulatory coverage will be addressed manually. Option B. Advocate for a phased implementation of test automation, prioritizing foundational tests and ensuring coverage of regulatory requirements, while continuing with targeted manual testing for complex scenarios. Option C. Immediately automate all identified test cases, regardless of their suitability for automation, to meet the product owner's demand for rapid acceleration of releases. Option D. Propose to defer all test automation efforts until after the product has achieved full regulatory certification, focusing solely on manual testing in the interim. The correct answer is B. Advocate for a phased implementation of test automation, prioritizing foundational tests and ensuring coverage of regulatory requirements, while continuing with targeted manual testing for complex scenarios. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the perceived immediate benefits of test automation with potential long-term risks and regulatory compliance. The product owners focus on speed and cost reduction, while understandable from a business perspective, may overlook critical aspects of quality assurance and regulatory adherence that are paramount in a regulated environment. Careful judgment is required to advocate for a balanced approach that prioritizes both agility and robust, compliant testing practices. The correct approach involves advocating for a phased implementation of test automation, starting with foundational elements like unit and integration tests, and gradually expanding to end-to-end and UI automation. This strategy allows the team to build confidence, refine their automation framework, and ensure that critical business logic and regulatory requirements are thoroughly covered before automating more complex or user-facing scenarios. This approach aligns with the principles of responsible agile development, where quality and compliance are not sacrificed for speed. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing financial services or healthcare, often mandate specific levels of testing and traceability. By prioritizing foundational automation and ensuring comprehensive coverage of regulatory requirements within the automated tests, the team demonstrates due diligence and adherence to these mandates. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of non-compliance and potential penalties. An incorrect approach would be to immediately automate all test cases, including those that are brittle, complex, or have low ROI for automation, simply to satisfy the product owner's demand for speed. This can lead to a high maintenance burden, unreliable test results, and a false sense of security regarding quality and compliance. Fails to acknowledge that not all tests are suitable for automation, and that manual exploratory testing remains crucial for uncovering defects that automation might miss. Furthermore, rushing automation without proper planning and framework development can result in tests that do not adequately cover regulatory requirements, leading to potential compliance breaches. Another incorrect approach is to resist any form of test automation, citing the need for manual testing to ensure quality. While manual testing has its place, an outright refusal to embrace automation in an agile context is a failure to adapt to modern development practices and can lead to significant delays and increased costs, potentially impacting the product's market competitiveness. It also misses opportunities to improve test coverage and efficiency, which can indirectly affect the ability to meet regulatory demands by freeing up resources for more critical compliance-focused activities. The professional reasoning process should involve understanding the product owner's objectives, clearly articulating the benefits and risks of different automation strategies, and proposing a plan that aligns with both agile principles and regulatory obligations. This includes educating stakeholders on the importance of a well-designed automation strategy that prioritizes coverage of critical functionalities and regulatory controls. The decision-making framework should prioritize a risk-based approach to automation, focusing on areas with the highest impact on quality and compliance, and advocating for continuous improvement and adaptation of the automation strategy as the product evolves. Question 8. The audit findings indicate that the project is experiencing significant scope creep and a lack of clear prioritization, leading to delays and team frustration. During a retrospective, it was revealed that the product owner has been inconsistently engaged with the product backlog, and the development team has been taking direction on scope changes directly from various stakeholders without formal backlog refinement or approval. The Scrum Master has been primarily focused on process adherence without actively addressing the root cause of these role-based conflicts. What is the most appropriate immediate action to address these audit findings and realign the team with agile principles? Option A. The Scrum Master facilitates a session with the product owner and development team to re-emphasize the product owner's sole authority over the product backlog and the development team's responsibility to build what is defined in the backlog, and to establish a clear process for managing scope changes through the product owner. Option B. The development team forms a subcommittee to create a new, more detailed requirements document that all stakeholders must sign off on before any work commences. Option C. The Scrum Master unilaterally decides to freeze the product backlog for the next 2 sprints to allow the team to catch up and prevent further scope creep. Option D. The product owner delegates all backlog refinement and prioritization responsibilities to the development team, trusting their technical judgment to define the product's direction. The correct answer is A. The Scrum Master facilitates a session with the product owner and development team to re-emphasize the product owner's sole authority over the product backlog and the development team's responsibility to build what is defined in the backlog, and to establish a clear process for managing scope changes through the product owner. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the need for clear accountability in Agile methodologies and the potential for ambiguity when roles and responsibilities are not rigorously defined and adhered to, especially during an audit. The audit findings highlight a breakdown in process, suggesting that the established Agile framework is not being effectively implemented. Careful judgment is required to identify the root cause and propose a solution that aligns with the principles of Agile development and the specific expectations of the Certified Agile Tester (CAT) certification, which emphasizes adherence to established Agile roles and responsibilities. The correct approach involves a direct and collaborative resolution that reinforces the defined roles within the Scrum framework. This means the product owner must be empowered to make decisions regarding the product backlog. The Scrum Master must facilitate the process and remove impediments, and the development team must focus on delivering the increment. By ensuring each role fulfills its core duties, the team can regain clarity and efficiency, directly addressing the audit's concerns about scope creep and unclear priorities. This aligns with the CAT certification's emphasis on understanding and applying Agile principles, including the distinct responsibilities of each role to ensure effective product delivery and quality. An incorrect approach that involves the Scrum Master unilaterally deciding to alter the product backlog without product owner consultation fails to respect the product owner's ultimate authority over the backlog's content and prioritization. This undermines the product owner's role and can lead to misaligned product direction, directly contradicting Agile principles and potentially violating the spirit of accountability expected in a certified tester. Another incorrect approach, where the development team bypasses the Scrum Master to directly negotiate scope changes with stakeholders, circumvents the established communication channels, and the Scrum Master's role as a facilitator and impediment remover. This can lead to uncontrolled scope creep, inconsistent understanding of requirements, and a breakdown in team collaboration, all of which are detrimental to Agile practices and would be flagged in an audit. Finally, an approach where the product owner delegates backlog management entirely to the development team without active engagement creates a vacuum of leadership and strategic direction. While the development team is responsible for how to build the product owner is responsible for what to build and why. This abdication of responsibility can lead to a product that does not meet market needs or business objectives, again failing to uphold the core tenets of Agile product ownership. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the core principles and roles defined by the chosen Agile framework, e.g., Scrum. 2. Identifying the specific audit finding and its implications for process adherence. 3. Evaluating proposed solutions against the defined roles and responsibilities. 4. Prioritizing solutions that reinforce accountability and collaboration within the established framework. 5. Seeking clarification or consensus from the relevant parties if ambiguity exists. Question 9. Comparative studies suggest that in regulated industries, the most effective approach to managing risks within an Agile development framework involves integrating risk identification, assessment, and mitigation directly into the iterative development cycles. Considering this, which of the following strategies best aligns with both Agile principles and regulatory expectations for robust risk management? Option A. Relying on informal discussions during daily stand-ups to identify and address risks as they arise, without formal documentation or tracking. Option B. Delegating risk management solely to a separate quality assurance team that operates independently of the development sprints. Option C. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment only after all planned features have been developed and before the product is released to users. Option D. Proactively identifying potential risks during backlog refinement, assessing their impact and likelihood, and incorporating mitigation tasks into sprint planning and execution. The correct answer is D. Proactively identifying potential risks during backlog refinement, assessing their impact and likelihood, and incorporating mitigation tasks into sprint planning and execution. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the rapid iteration inherent in Agile methodologies with the stringent regulatory obligations of ensuring product quality and safety, particularly within a regulated industry like financial services. The pressure to deliver quickly can sometimes lead to overlooking potential risks, which, if unaddressed, could result in significant financial losses, reputational damage, and regulatory noncompliance. Careful judgment is required to integrate risk management seamlessly into the Agile workflow without hindering progress. The correct approach involves proactively identifying, assessing, and mitigating risks at every stage of the Agile development lifecycle, from sprint planning to backlog refinement and daily stand-ups. This aligns with the principles of continuous improvement and adaptation central to Agile. Specifically, incorporating risk assessment into backlog refinement ensures that potential risks associated with new features or changes are understood and prioritized. Implementing mitigation strategies as part of sprint planning and execution means that risk reduction activities are treated as integral parts of the development work, not as an afterthought. This proactive and integrated approach is ethically sound as it prioritizes delivering a safe and reliable product, and it is regulatorily compliant by demonstrating a commitment to managing potential adverse outcomes, which is often a requirement in frameworks like the UK's Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, Guidelines for Technology Risk Management. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on delivering features without a structured risk assessment process fails to meet regulatory expectations for due diligence and risk mitigation. This can lead to the introduction of undetected vulnerabilities or defects that could have severe consequences. Ethically, it is a failure to uphold the responsibility to deliver a quality product. Regulatorily, it could be seen as a breach of duty of care and a violation of principles requiring robust risk management frameworks. Another incorrect approach that relegates risk management to a post-development phase or treats it as a separate, infrequent activity is also professionally unacceptable. This reactive stance is unlikely to catch risks early enough to prevent their impact. It demonstrates a lack of commitment to embedding risk awareness throughout the development process, which is a common expectation in regulated environments. Such an approach can result in costly rework and potential breaches of compliance, as regulatory bodies often expect ongoing and integrated risk management, not a one-off check. A further incorrect approach that relies on informal, ad hoc risk discussions without a documented or systematic process is insufficient. While informal communication is vital in Agile, it does not provide the necessary traceability or assurance required by regulators. Without a structured method for identifying, documenting, and tracking risks and their mitigation, it becomes difficult to demonstrate compliance or to learn from past risk events. This lack of formalization can lead to overlooked risks and a failure to meet the demonstrable due diligence expected in regulated sectors. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific regulatory landscape and its requirements for risk management in the context of software development. 2. Integrating risk identification and assessment into the core Agile ceremonies, e.g., backlog refinement, sprint planning. 3. Prioritizing risk mitigation activities alongside feature development, treating them as essential work items. 4. Establishing clear ownership and accountability for identified risks and their mitigation plans. 5. Maintaining a transparent and auditable record of risk management activities. 6. Regularly reviewing and adapting the risk management process based on feedback and evolving project needs. Question 10. Risk assessment procedures indicate that the automated build, test, and deployment processes within our CI/CD pipeline are accelerating feature delivery, but may be inadvertently bypassing critical regulatory compliance checks. As an Agile tester, which approach best mitigates this risk while adhering to regulatory frameworks relevant to financial services? Option A. Prioritize deployment speed by only including functional and performance tests in the automated pipeline, deferring all compliance considerations to a separate, less frequent review cycle. Option B. Implement automated compliance validation tests as integral stages within the CI/CD pipeline, ensuring that any deviation from regulatory requirements automatically halts the deployment process. Option C. Focus solely on unit and integration tests within the CI/CD pipeline, assuming that downstream systems will handle any necessary regulatory adherence. Option D. Rely on comprehensive manual compliance audits conducted by a dedicated compliance team after each deployment to production. The correct answer is B. Implement automated compliance validation tests as integral stages within the CI/CD pipeline, ensuring that any deviation from regulatory requirements automatically halts the deployment process. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the speed and efficiency benefits of CI/CD with the imperative to maintain regulatory compliance and data integrity, particularly within the context of financial services, where the Certified Agile Tester (CAT) certification is relevant. The pressure to deliver features rapidly through automated pipelines can inadvertently create risks if not managed with a strong understanding of regulatory obligations. The correct approach involves integrating regulatory checks and compliance validations directly into the CI/CD pipeline. This means that automated tests are designed not only to verify functional correctness, but also to ensure adherence to relevant financial regulations, data privacy laws, and internal governance policies. This proactive integration allows for early detection of compliance issues, preventing them from reaching production and incurring significant penalties or reputational damage. The regulatory justification stems from the principle of compliance by design, which is increasingly expected in regulated industries. By embedding compliance checks into the automated workflow, organizations demonstrate a commitment to meeting their legal and ethical obligations throughout the software development lifecycle, aligning with frameworks that emphasize risk management and control. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on functional testing without considering regulatory requirements fails to address a critical risk. This oversight can lead to the deployment of software that, while functionally sound, violates data handling regulations, e.g., GDPR, CCPA if applicable to the jurisdiction, market conduct rules, or reporting obligations. The regulatory failure here is a direct breach of compliance, exposing the organization to fines, sanctions, and loss of trust. Another incorrect approach that relies on manual, post-deployment compliance audits is also professionally unacceptable. While audits are necessary, depending on them as the primary mechanism for compliance detection in a CI/CD environment is reactive and inefficient. The speed of CI/CD means that non-compliant code could be deployed and in use for a period before detection, increasing the potential impact of a breach. This approach neglects the opportunity to leverage automation for continuous assurance, a core tenet of modern, risk-aware development practices. The ethical failure lies in not proactively safeguarding against regulatory breaches when automated solutions are available. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes deployment speed above all else, even when automated compliance checks flag potential issues, is fundamentally flawed. This demonstrates a disregard for regulatory obligations and a prioritization of business expediency over legal and ethical responsibilities. The professional decision-making process should involve a risk-based approach where automated compliance gates are treated as critical checkpoints. When an automated check fails, the pipeline should halt, triggering an investigation and remediation process. This ensures that only compliant code progresses through the pipeline, fostering a culture of quality and compliance. Professionals must understand that in regulated environments, speed cannot come at the expense of compliance. Question 11. Regulatory review indicates that the new customer onboarding module for a financial services application must adhere to strict data validation rules to prevent fraudulent activities and ensure compliance with data privacy laws. The development team is operating under an aggressive Agile sprint schedule. As the Certified Agile Tester, CAT, you are tasked with designing test cases for the input fields related to customer age and income, which approach best ensures both comprehensive testing and adherence to regulatory expectations within the Agile framework. Option A. Use equivalence partitioning to define valid and invalid age and income ranges, but do not explicitly test boundary values as this is considered redundant. Option B. Focus solely on testing the boundary values for age and income, assuming these are the most critical areas for regulatory compliance. Option C. Randomly select a few age and income values to test, prioritizing those that seem most likely to cause errors based on intuition. Option D. Apply equivalence partitioning to define valid and invalid age and income ranges, and then apply boundary value analysis to test the limits of these ranges. Correct answer is D. Apply equivalence partitioning to define valid and invalid age and income ranges, and then apply boundary value analysis to test the limits of these ranges. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the Agile tester must balance the need for efficient and effective test design with the regulatory requirement for thoroughness and risk mitigation, as stipulated by the Certified Agile Tester, CAT, framework. The pressure to deliver quickly in an Agile environment can sometimes lead to shortcuts that might overlook critical test cases, potentially exposing the system to defects that could have regulatory implications. Careful judgment is required to ensure that test design techniques are applied rigorously, even under time constraints. The correct approach involves systematically applying equivalence partitioning to identify valid and invalid input ranges and boundary value analysis to test the edges of these ranges. This is justified by the CAT framework's emphasis on risk-based testing and ensuring comprehensive coverage of potential system behaviors. By focusing on these techniques, the tester is proactively identifying and mitigating potential defects that could lead to noncompliance with regulatory standards or compromise data integrity, which are core tenets of responsible software development and testing under the CAT guidelines. An incorrect approach of solely relying on equivalence partitioning without considering boundary value analysis fails to address the higher probability of defects occurring at the boundaries of input ranges. This oversight could lead to missed defects that might have significant regulatory consequences, such as incorrect processing of financial transactions or invalid data submissions. Ethically, this represents a failure to exercise due diligence in testing. Another incorrect approach of exclusively using boundary value analysis without the foundational structure of equivalence partitioning is also professionally unacceptable. While boundary testing is crucial, it needs to be informed by the understanding of valid and invalid data sets provided by equivalence partitioning. Without this, the tester might focus on boundary values that are not representative of typical or even possible valid inputs, leading to inefficient testing and potentially missing defects within the core valid partitions. This demonstrates a lack of systematic test design, which is a professional failing. A further incorrect approach of randomly selecting test cases without applying any structured test design technique is the most egregious. This method is inherently inefficient, lacks coverage, and offers no assurance of identifying critical defects. It directly contravenes the CAT framework's principles of structured testing and risk management, leading to a high likelihood of regulatory noncompliance and reputational damage. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the regulatory context and potential risks associated with the feature being tested. 2. Prioritizing test design techniques that offer the best balance of coverage and efficiency, such as equivalence partitioning and boundary value analysis. 3. Documenting the chosen techniques and the rationale behind them. 4. Continuously evaluating the effectiveness of the test suite and adapting as necessary. Question 12. Consider a scenario where a product owner is highly motivated to include several high-priority, complex product backlog items, PBI, in the upcoming sprint due to an upcoming market opportunity. The development team, after reviewing the PBIs in their current capacity, forecasts that they can realistically complete only half of the requested items to the definition of done within the sprint duration. What is the most appropriate approach for the development team during sprint planning? Option A. The development team agrees to the product owner's requested PBIs and commits to a sprint goal that includes all items, with the understanding that they will do their best to complete them, even if it means not meeting the definition of done for some. Option B. The development team accepts all the product owner's requested PBIs, assuming they can work overtime to complete them, even if it means compromising on the definition of done for some items. Option C. The development team collaborates with the product owner to select a subset of the high-priority PBIs that they forecast they can complete to the definition of done, and together they define a realistic sprint goal based on this selection. Option D. The development team selects only the simplest and quickest PBIs from the product owner's list, deferring the more complex, high-priority items to future sprints to ensure they meet their velocity targets. The correct answer is C. The development team collaborates with the product owner to select a subset of the high-priority PBIs that they forecast they can complete to the definition of done, and together they define a realistic sprint goal based on this selection. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in Agile development, balancing the desire for rapid delivery with the need to ensure the quality and integrity of the product. The product owner has a clear vision and urgency, while the development team has a responsibility to deliver a sustainable, high-quality increment. The professional challenge lies in navigating these competing priorities during sprint planning without compromising either the product's long-term viability or the team's ability to deliver value effectively. Careful judgment is required to select product backlog items, PBI, that are not only valuable but also achievable within the sprint's constraints and align with the definition of done. Correct approach involves the development team collaborating with the product owner to select PBIs that they forecast they can complete within the sprint, considering their capacity and the definition of done. This collaborative forecasting ensures that the sprint goal is realistic and that the team commits to a scope they can deliver with high quality. This aligns with the principles of Scrum, which emphasize self-organization and empirical process control. Specifically, the Scrum Guide, which is the foundational framework for Agile testing certifications like CAT, mandates that the development team selects the work for the sprint. This selection is based on their understanding of the product backlog, the sprint goal, and their own capacity. The ethical consideration here is the team's commitment to delivering a potentially releasable increment, which requires realistic forecasting and adherence to quality standards. An incorrect approach would be for the development team to accept all PBIs the product owner desires, regardless of their capacity or the team's ability to complete them to the definition of done. This would likely lead to scope creep, technical debt, and a compromised sprint goal, violating the principle of delivering a done increment. Ethically, this demonstrates a lack of professional integrity in committing to work that cannot be realistically achieved, potentially misleading stakeholders about progress. Another incorrect approach is for the development team to unilaterally select only the easiest PBIs, ignoring the product owner's stated priorities and the overall product vision. While this might ensure the team completes their sprint, it fails to deliver maximum value to the stakeholders and undermines the collaborative nature of sprint planning. This approach disregards the product owner's role in maximizing product value and can lead to a fragmented or incomplete product. A third incorrect approach involves the development team agreeing to a sprint goal that is aspirational but not achievable with the selected PBIs, or agreeing to a scope that cannot be completed to the definition of done. This creates a false sense of progress and can lead to significant rework and disappointment at the sprint review. It is a failure to uphold the commitment to transparency and inspection inherent in Agile methodologies. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve active listening to the product owner's needs and priorities, transparent communication about the development team's capacity and technical considerations, and a collaborative negotiation to arrive at a mutually agreed-upon sprint backlog that balances value delivery with realistic execution and quality. This process should always be guided by the principles of Scrum and the commitment to delivering a done increment. Question 13. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new process for defect discovery within our Agile sprints could significantly reduce post-release issues. Which of the following approaches best optimizes this process while adhering to the principles of Agile testing and regulatory expectations for quality assurance? Option A. Prioritize only scripted test cases that cover known requirements, as this ensures complete coverage and predictability. Option B. Allocate a fixed, significant portion of each sprint to unstructured, free-form exploratory testing by all team members. Option C. Conduct structured exploratory testing sessions at the end of each sprint, guided by risk-based charters to identify potential defects before release. Option D. Rely exclusively on automated regression tests to detect defects, as this is the most efficient method for rapid feedback. The correct answer is C. Conduct structured exploratory testing sessions at the end of each sprint, guided by risk-based charters, to identify potential defects before release. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the efficiency gains of a new process with the potential risks to product quality and regulatory compliance. The Certified Agile Tester (CAT) framework emphasizes delivering value and ensuring quality within an Agile environment. Exploratory testing, a key technique for defect discovery, needs to be integrated effectively without becoming a bottleneck or compromising the speed of delivery. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that optimizes process while upholding testing rigor. The correct approach involves integrating exploratory testing sessions directly into the sprint workflow, guided by risk-based charters. This aligns with Agile principles of continuous feedback and adaptation. Regulatory frameworks for software development, particularly in regulated industries, often mandate thorough testing to ensure product safety, security, and efficacy. By proactively discovering defects through well-defined, yet flexible, exploratory testing, Teams can reduce the cost of fixing defects later in the life cycle and demonstrate due diligence in meeting quality standards. This approach optimizes the process by making defect discovery a continuous, integrated activity rather than a separate, potentially time-consuming phase. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on scripted testing, neglecting exploratory techniques, fails to leverage the strengths of agile development in uncovering unexpected issues. This can lead to a false sense of security and potentially missed critical defects, which could have regulatory implications if the product fails in the field. Another incorrect approach that allocates excessive, unstructured time to exploratory testing without clear objectives or charters risks inefficiency and may not yield the most valuable defect discoveries. This can lead to wasted effort and delays, impacting delivery timelines and potentially increasing costs without a commensurate increase in quality assurance. A third incorrect approach that relies solely on automated regression testing to the exclusion of any form of exploratory testing overlooks the inherent limitations of automation in finding novel or complex defects that human testers can identify through intuition and experience. This can result in a product that passes automated checks but still contains significant flaws, posing risks to users and the organization. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding the product's risk profile, the team's capabilities, and the specific regulatory requirements. This involves evaluating how different testing techniques, including exploratory testing, contribute to achieving both quality and compliance goals within the Agile context. The chosen approach should be adaptable, allowing for continuous improvement based on feedback and defect trends. Question 14. The investigation demonstrates that a financial services firm is developing a new customer onboarding platform using Agile methodologies. The team is under pressure to launch quickly to meet market demand. Given the sensitive nature of customer data and the stringent regulatory requirements for financial institutions, what is the most appropriate risk-based approach to testing across the different Agile testing levels to ensure compliance and quality? Option A. Focus primarily on automated unit tests for all new code, assuming that integration and system testing will be minimal due to the rapid iteration cycles, and rely on user acceptance testing to catch any remaining compliance issues. Option B. Implement a comprehensive suite of integration tests for all external system interactions and a broad range of system tests covering all functional requirements, with minimal emphasis on unit testing and acceptance testing to expedite development. Option C. Conduct extensive manual system testing and user acceptance testing for all features, deferring detailed unit and integration testing to a later phase to avoid delaying the initial release. Option D. Prioritize unit testing for all code, integration testing for core data flows, system testing for end-to-end user journeys, and acceptance testing for business stakeholder sign-off, with the risk assessment guiding the depth and breadth of testing at each level based on potential impact and likelihood of failure. The correct answer is D. Prioritize unit testing for all code, integration testing for core data flows, system testing for end-to-end user journeys, and acceptance testing for business stakeholder sign-off, with the risk assessment guiding the depth and breadth of testing at each level based on potential impact and likelihood of failure. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the rapid iteration inherent in Agile development with the need for robust quality assurance and adherence to regulatory compliance, particularly in a domain where data integrity and system reliability are paramount. The pressure to deliver quickly can sometimes lead to shortcuts in testing, which, if not managed through a risk-based approach, can result in significant compliance failures and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to ensure that testing efforts are focused on the most critical areas, thereby mitigating risks effectively without unduly slowing down the development process. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that informs the strategy for each testing level. This means identifying potential failure points, their impact, and the likelihood of occurrence, and then prioritizing testing activities accordingly. For unit testing, this would involve ensuring that critical business logic and error handling are thoroughly covered. Integration testing would focus on the interfaces and data flows between components, especially those handling sensitive information or core functionalities. System testing would validate end-to-end business processes and compliance requirements. Acceptance testing, involving stakeholders, would confirm that the system meets user needs and regulatory obligations. This approach is correct because it aligns testing efforts with the highest risks, ensuring that resources are used efficiently to achieve the required level of quality and compliance. Regulatory frameworks often mandate a risk-based approach to quality assurance, emphasizing the need to demonstrate that controls are in place to manage identified risks. By proactively assessing and addressing risks at each testing level, the team can provide assurance that the system is fit for purpose and compliant with relevant regulations. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on the speed of agile development to catch defects, assuming that frequent iterations will naturally lead to a high-quality, compliant product. This fails to acknowledge that even in agile, specific regulatory requirements demand explicit verification and validation. Another incorrect approach would be to focus testing efforts only on the most visible or easily testable features, neglecting less obvious but potentially high-risk areas. This would lead to a false sense of security and could result in critical compliance breaches going undetected. A further incorrect approach would be to treat testing as a separate, late-stage activity rather than an integrated part of the development lifecycle. This would mean that risks are not identified and mitigated early, leading to costly rework and potential noncompliance. These incorrect approaches are professionally unacceptable because they disregard the fundamental principles of risk management and regulatory compliance, potentially exposing the organization to significant legal, financial, and reputational harm. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding the regulatory landscape and its implications for the product. This involves actively engaging with compliance officers and legal counsel to identify all applicable regulations. Subsequently, a thorough risk assessment should be conducted, mapping potential system failures to regulatory requirements and business impacts. Testing strategies for each level should then be designed to specifically address these identified risks, ensuring that critical functionalities and compliance points are adequately validated. Continuous feedback loops between development, testing, and compliance teams are essential to adapt the testing approach as the product evolves and new risks emerge. Question 15. The analysis reveals that a new Agile project team is struggling to balance the creation of working software with the perceived need for extensive, formal documentation, leading to delays and frustration. The team lead is advocating for a return to traditional, comprehensive documentation practices to ensure all bases are covered, while a senior developer suggests that any documentation beyond basic user stories is unnecessary as long as the software functions correctly. Which approach best embodies the core values and principles of the Agile Manifesto while ensuring professional responsibility? Option A. Develop lean, relevant documentation that supports collaboration, understanding, and traceability, focusing on what is essential for delivering value and meeting quality standards, while prioritizing the creation and demonstration of working software. Option B. Revert to comprehensive, formal documentation practices similar to waterfall methodologies to ensure all potential issues are documented upfront, even if it slows down the delivery of working software. Option C. Prioritize the creation of extensive technical documentation and process guides before significant development begins, ensuring a robust foundation for future maintenance and compliance. Option D. Adopt a minimal documentation strategy, focusing only on basic user stories and assuming that working software is sufficient evidence of quality and understanding, even for complex features. The correct answer is A. Develop lean, relevant documentation that supports collaboration, understanding, and traceability, focusing on what is essential for delivering value and meeting quality standards, while prioritizing the creation and demonstration of working software. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in Agile environments where the pressure to deliver quickly can conflict with the need for thorough, yet not overly burdensome, documentation. The professional challenge lies in balancing the Agile principle of working software over comprehensive documentation, with the implicit need for sufficient information to ensure quality, maintainability, and stakeholder understanding. Over-documenting can slow down development and hinder responsiveness to change, while under-documenting can lead to misunderstandings, technical debt, and difficulty in future maintenance or knowledge transfer. Careful judgment is required to identify the minimum viable documentation that supports the team's Agile goals and regulatory compliance. The correct approach prioritizes creating and demonstrating working software while ensuring that documentation is lean, relevant, and directly supports collaboration and understanding. This aligns with the Agile Manifesto's core values by emphasizing individuals and interactions, customer collaboration, and responding to change. Specifically, it upholds the principle of working software over comprehensive documentation by focusing on tangible, demonstrable progress. It also supports customer collaboration over contract negotiation by ensuring that documentation facilitates clear communication and feedback loops with stakeholders. The regulatory and ethical justification stems from the Agile ethos itself, which, when applied responsibly, leads to more adaptable and value-driven outcomes. In many regulated industries, while comprehensive documentation might be a traditional approach, Agile frameworks allow for a shift towards evidence of quality and functionality through working software and targeted, effective documentation that meets regulatory needs without stifling agility. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on extensive, formal documentation, akin to traditional waterfall methods, fails to embrace the Agile principle of working software over comprehensive documentation. This can lead to delays, increased costs, and a reduced ability to respond to evolving customer needs or market changes, thereby undermining the core benefits of Agile. It also risks prioritizing processes and tools, heavy documentation, over individuals and interactions, potentially hindering team communication and collaboration. Another incorrect approach that advocates for minimal to no documentation, even for critical aspects, directly violates the spirit of responsible Agile development. While working software over comprehensive documentation is a principle, it does not imply the absence of all documentation. Essential documentation such as user stories, acceptance criteria, architectural decisions, and key test results is crucial for shared understanding, traceability, and ensuring that the software meets its intended purpose and quality standards. Neglecting this can lead to significant technical debt, knowledge silos, and an inability to demonstrate compliance or auditability, which can have serious ethical and potentially regulatory implications if quality or safety is compromised. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a continuous assessment of the team's needs and the project's context. Professionals should ask, what documentation is absolutely necessary for the team to collaborate effectively? What documentation is required to demonstrate value to the customer and stakeholders? What documentation is essential for understanding, maintaining, and evolving the product in the long term? What are the minimum documentation requirements to satisfy any relevant regulatory or compliance obligations? The goal is to find the sweet spot where documentation supports agility and quality without becoming a bureaucratic burden. Question 16. The evaluation methodology shows that the Agile team is experiencing challenges in optimizing their automated test scripting process, leading to difficulties in maintaining and scaling their test suites. Considering the need for robust, auditable, and efficient test automation, which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices for process optimization in automated test scripting? Option A. Developing scripts that focus solely on positive test cases and omit detailed error handling or logging mechanisms to simplify script logic. Option B. Automating only the most critical functional test cases and deferring the automation of performance and security tests to a later phase. Option C. Prioritizing the rapid creation of numerous test scripts with minimal documentation to maximize test coverage in the shortest possible time. Option D. Implementing a strategy that emphasizes modular script design, comprehensive documentation, and adherence to established coding standards for test automation. The correct answer is D. Implementing a strategy that emphasizes modular script design, comprehensive documentation, and adherence to established coding standards for test automation. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the efficiency gains of automated test scripting with the need for robust, maintainable, and compliant test suites. The pressure to deliver quickly in an Agile environment can lead to shortcuts that compromise long-term quality and adherence to regulatory standards. Careful judgment is required to ensure that process optimization in test scripting does not inadvertently introduce risks or violate established guidelines. The correct approach involves developing automated test scripts that are modular, well-documented, and adhere to defined coding standards and best practices for test automation. This ensures that scripts are reusable, easy to understand, maintain, and debug, which is crucial for long-term project success and for demonstrating compliance during audits. Regulatory frameworks often emphasize the importance of traceable, verifiable, and maintainable documentation and processes, which directly translates to the quality and structure of automated test scripts. By focusing on these aspects, the team ensures that the automated tests themselves are a reliable artifact that supports the overall quality assurance process and meets any applicable regulatory requirements for testing evidence. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over maintainability by creating monolithic, poorly documented scripts fails to meet the implicit and often explicit requirements for auditable and maintainable test artifacts. This can lead to significant technical debt, making it difficult to update tests as the application evolves, and can be a red flag during regulatory reviews where the clarity and reliability of testing processes are scrutinized. Another incorrect approach that neglects to incorporate error handling and logging within the automated scripts creates a brittle testing framework. When tests fail, it becomes difficult to diagnose the root cause, wasting valuable time and potentially masking underlying defects. This lack of diagnostic capability undermines the effectiveness of the testing process and can be seen as a failure to implement adequate quality controls, which may have regulatory implications depending on the industry. Finally, an incorrect approach that focuses solely on functional coverage without considering performance or security aspects in automated scripting creates a gap in the overall test strategy. While functional tests are essential, neglecting other critical areas can lead to the release of products with significant vulnerabilities or performance issues, which can have severe regulatory consequences, particularly in highly regulated industries. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment. Teams should evaluate the potential impact of different scripting approaches on product quality, maintainability, and regulatory compliance. Establishing clear coding standards, investing in training for test automation engineers, and conducting regular code reviews for test scripts are essential steps to ensure that process optimization in automated test scripting leads to sustainable quality and compliance. Question 17. To address the challenge of optimizing the testing process within an agile development lifecycle while ensuring adherence to stringent regulatory requirements for auditable quality assurance, which of the following techniques would be most effective in providing continuous feedback and verifiable evidence of quality? Option A. Documenting all test cases and results manually in a separate, non-integrated system. Option B. Relying primarily on manual exploratory testing without automated regression. Option C. Skipping formal test execution and relying solely on developer unit tests for quality assurance. Option D. Integrating automated regression testing into the continuous integration pipeline. The correct answer is D. Integrating automated regression testing into the continuous integration pipeline. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for rapid feedback and continuous improvement inherent in agile methodologies with the regulatory obligation to maintain auditable evidence of testing activities. The pressure to deliver quickly can sometimes lead teams to overlook or deprioritize the documentation of their testing processes and outcomes, which can have significant compliance implications. Careful judgment is required to ensure that agile testing techniques are implemented in a way that satisfies both the spirit of agile and the letter of regulatory requirements. The correct approach involves integrating automated regression testing into the continuous integration pipeline. This represents best professional practice because it directly addresses process optimization by ensuring that a comprehensive suite of tests is executed automatically with every code change. This provides immediate feedback on the impact of new features or bug fixes, allowing for swift identification and resolution of defects. From a regulatory perspective, automated test results, when properly logged and stored, provide objective and repeatable evidence of the quality assurance performed. This aligns with principles of good governance and auditability, demonstrating that the organization has robust quality controls in place. For a certified Agile tester, this demonstrates an understanding of how to leverage technology to enhance both agility and compliance. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on manual exploratory testing without any form of automated regression. While exploratory testing is valuable for uncovering unexpected issues and understanding user experience, it is inherently less repeatable and harder to document comprehensively as a consistent quality gate. This approach fails to provide the continuous, objective evidence required by many regulatory frameworks, making it difficult to demonstrate adherence to quality standards during an audit. Another incorrect approach would be to document all test cases and results manually in a separate, non-integrated system. While this might capture the information, it creates a significant disconnect between development and testing activities, hindering the speed and efficiency that Agile aims to achieve. This manual overhead can lead to delays, increased risk of human error in documentation, and a lack of real-time feedback, all of which are detrimental to both Agile principles and regulatory compliance, as it suggests a less mature and less integrated quality assurance process. A further incorrect approach would be to skip formal test execution and rely solely on developer unit tests for quality assurance. While unit tests are a critical component of a robust testing strategy, they are typically focused on individual code components and do not provide the end-to-end validation or user-centric perspective that is essential for comprehensive quality assurance and regulatory compliance. This approach would leave significant gaps in the testing coverage, making it impossible to demonstrate that the product meets broader quality and safety requirements. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of both the Agile principles being applied and the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the project or industry. Professionals should proactively identify potential conflicts or gaps and seek solutions that optimize for both speed and compliance. This often involves leveraging appropriate tools and techniques, such as test automation, to create a testing framework that is both efficient and auditable. Continuous communication with stakeholders, including compliance officers and quality assurance leads, is crucial to ensure that the chosen testing strategy meets all necessary standards. Question 18. The review process indicates that the current performance testing strategy for the Agile project involves conducting a single, comprehensive performance test only after all development sprints are completed. This approach aims to simulate peak user load across the entire application before the final release. Option A. Prioritize exhaustive performance testing of every single component in the application, regardless of its criticality or recent changes. Option B. Integrate performance testing activities into each sprint, focusing on testing critical user journeys and components that are being developed or significantly modified within that sprint. Option C. Rely exclusively on manual performance testing methods to simulate user interactions and measure application responsiveness. Option D. Conduct a single, large-scale performance test at the end of the project, simulating peak user load across the entire application. The correct answer is B. Integrate performance testing activities into each sprint, focusing on testing critical user journeys and components that are being developed or significantly modified within that sprint. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for robust performance testing with the practical constraints of an Agile development lifecycle, while adhering to the specific regulatory framework for the Certified Agile Tester (CAT) exam. The CAT certification, by its nature, emphasizes Agile principles and practices. Therefore, any approach to performance testing must be integrated seamlessly into the iterative and incremental nature of Agile development, ensuring that performance considerations are not an afterthought but a continuous concern. Careful judgment is required to select a performance testing strategy that provides meaningful insights without disrupting the flow of development or introducing excessive overhead. The correct approach involves integrating performance testing activities into each sprint, focusing on testing critical user journeys and components that are being developed or significantly modified within that sprint. This aligns with Agile principles of continuous integration and testing. By testing incrementally, potential performance bottlenecks can be identified and addressed early in the development cycle, reducing the cost and effort of remediation. This proactive approach is ethically sound, as it aims to deliver a high-quality, reliable product to the end user, fulfilling the tester's responsibility to ensure the application functions as expected under anticipated load. Regulatory compliance within the CAT framework would implicitly support such integrated and continuous quality assurance practices. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on a large-scale performance test at the end of the project fails to embrace Agile principles. This Big Bang testing strategy is inefficient and counterproductive in an Agile environment, as it delays feedback and makes it difficult to pinpoint the root cause of performance issues that may have accumulated over multiple sprints. Ethically, this approach risks delivering a product that is not performant, potentially leading to user dissatisfaction and reputational damage, which is contrary to the professional obligation to deliver quality. Another incorrect approach that relies exclusively on manual performance testing is also problematic. Manual testing has its place. Performance testing under load inherently requires automation to simulate realistic user concurrency and measure metrics accurately and repeatedly. Relying solely on manual methods would be time-consuming, prone to human error, and incapable of generating the necessary load to identify performance degradation. This would be a failure to adequately test the application's performance under load, potentially violating professional standards of due diligence in quality assurance. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes testing every single component for performance, regardless of its criticality or recent changes, is inefficient and deviates from Agile's focus on delivering value. Agile methodologies advocate for prioritizing testing efforts based on risk and impact. Exhaustively testing every component would consume excessive resources and time, diverting attention from more critical areas and potentially slowing down the delivery of valuable features. This approach lacks the strategic focus required for effective Agile performance testing. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes continuous integration of performance testing into the Agile workflow. This involves understanding the application's architecture, identifying critical user journeys, and defining performance objectives early. Performance testing should be treated as a regular activity within sprints, with results feeding back into the development process. Prioritization should be based on the impact of performance on user experience and business objectives, ensuring that testing efforts are focused and efficient. Question 19. What factors determine a realistic and sustainable team velocity for effective sprint planning and release forecasting within an Agile framework, considering the need for continuous improvement and stakeholder transparency? Option A. The average number of story points completed in previous sprints, adjusted for team member experience and the complexity of upcoming user stories. Option B. The velocity achieved in the first sprint after team formation, assuming this represents the team's optimal delivery rate. Option C. The number of story points completed by the highest performing team member in the previous sprint, used as a benchmark for the entire team. Option D. The total number of tasks estimated and committed to by the team at the start of the sprint, regardless of external dependencies or technical debt. Correct answer is A. The average number of story points completed in previous sprints, adjusted for team member experience and the complexity of upcoming user stories. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because accurately measuring and utilizing team velocity is crucial for effective Agile delivery and stakeholder trust. Misinterpreting or misusing velocity data can lead to unrealistic commitments, team burnout, and ultimately, failure to meet project objectives, which can have significant reputational and financial consequences for the organization. Careful judgment is required to ensure velocity is used as a planning tool, not a performance metric. The correct approach involves a holistic consideration of all factors that influence a team's ability to deliver value, including team composition, skill sets, technical debt, external dependencies, and the complexity of the work itself. This approach aligns with the principles of Agile, which emphasize continuous improvement and adaptation. Regulatory frameworks, while not always explicitly detailing velocity measurement, implicitly support transparency and realistic planning. Ethical considerations demand that teams are not pressured into unsustainable delivery rates. By considering these multifaceted influences, teams can establish a more accurate and sustainable velocity, fostering trust and enabling better forecasting. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the number of story points completed without considering the underlying factors is professionally unacceptable. This can lead to a false sense of progress and mask underlying issues. Ethically, it can create undue pressure on the team to game the system by inflating estimates or rushing through work, compromising quality, and potentially leading to burnout. This approach fails to uphold the Agile principle of sustainable pace and can violate implicit regulatory expectations of due diligence in project planning. Another incorrect approach that uses velocity as a direct performance metric for individual team members or the team as a whole is also professionally flawed. This creates a competitive rather than collaborative environment, undermining team cohesion and the core values of Agile. It can lead to individuals or the team prioritizing easily estimable or quick win tasks over more complex but valuable work, distorting the true progress and potentially leading to a failure to deliver on strategic goals. This approach can also lead to ethical breaches by fostering an environment of fear and discouraging open communication about impediments. A further incorrect approach that ignores external dependencies and organizational impediments when calculating velocity is also problematic. This leads to an inflated and unrealistic velocity that does not reflect the team's actual capacity to deliver. When these external factors inevitably cause delays, the team's projected delivery dates will be missed, eroding stakeholder confidence and potentially leading to contractual issues or regulatory scrutiny if commitments are not met. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence in planning and a failure to manage risks effectively. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a continuous feedback loop. Teams should regularly inspect their velocity, understand the contributing factors, and adapt their planning accordingly. This involves open communication with stakeholders about what velocity represents and its limitations. When faced with pressure to manipulate velocity or ignore impediments, professionals should refer to Agile principles, ethical guidelines regarding transparency and sustainability, and any relevant organizational policies that promote responsible delivery. The focus should always be on delivering value predictably and sustainably, rather than on arbitrary metrics. Question 20. The control framework reveals that the development team is under significant pressure to accelerate feature delivery for an upcoming market launch, leading to discussions about potentially reducing the scope of testing within the current sprint to meet the deadline. As a certified Agile tester, what is the most appropriate course of action to uphold both Agile principles and regulatory compliance? Option A. Advocate for integrating comprehensive testing activities, including automated checks, into each sprint, ensuring that quality is built in from the start and that any identified risks are immediately addressed. Option B. Agree to defer a significant portion of the testing to a later stage, focusing primarily on functional testing of the newly developed features to meet the immediate deadline. Option C. Suggest prioritizing the completion of all planned features, with the understanding that the testing team will perform regression testing on the entire application in the subsequent sprint. Option D. Propose a reduction in the number of test cases executed for the current sprint, relying more heavily on ad hoc exploratory testing to cover the essential functionalities. The correct answer is A. Advocate for integrating comprehensive testing activities, including automated checks, into each sprint, ensuring that quality is built in from the start and that any identified risks are immediately addressed. Explanation. The control framework reveals a common challenge in Agile environments, balancing the rapid iteration inherent in Agile methodologies with the need for robust quality assurance and adherence to established regulatory standards. This scenario is professionally challenging because the pressure to deliver features quickly can sometimes lead to shortcuts in testing, potentially compromising product integrity and regulatory compliance. Careful judgment is required to ensure that Agile principles, such as continuous feedback and adaptation, are applied without sacrificing the fundamental responsibilities of a tester. The correct approach involves integrating testing activities seamlessly into each sprint, ensuring that test cases are developed alongside user stories and that automated tests are a priority. This approach aligns with Agile fundamentals by promoting early and continuous testing, enabling rapid feedback loops, and reducing the risk of defects accumulating. From a regulatory perspective, this proactive testing strategy helps ensure that the product meets quality standards and compliance requirements throughout the development lifecycle, rather than attempting to address them as an afterthought. This minimizes the risk of non-compliance and the associated penalties or reputational damage. An incorrect approach of deferring comprehensive testing until the end of the development cycle is professionally unacceptable. This violates Agile principles by delaying feedback and increasing the likelihood of significant rework and missed deadlines. Ethically and regulatorily, it creates a high risk of delivering a product that does not meet quality or compliance standards, potentially leading to customer harm or regulatory sanctions. Another incorrect approach of relying solely on manual exploratory testing without a defined strategy or automation is also professionally unsound. While exploratory testing has its place, A complete absence of structured test design and automation in an agile context is inefficient and prone to human error. It fails to provide the necessary repeatability and scalability for continuous integration and delivery, and it increases the risk of overlooking critical defects that could have regulatory implications. A third incorrect approach of prioritizing feature development over test automation, assuming that manual testing will suffice, is a failure in professional judgment. While feature delivery is important, neglecting test automation in an agile setting leads to a fragile codebase and an unsustainable testing process. This can result in regression issues that are difficult to detect and fix, potentially leading to the release of non-compliant or defective software, which carries significant regulatory and ethical risks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of both agile principles and the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the project. Testers must advocate for the integration of quality assurance throughout the development process, not as a separate phase. This includes actively participating in sprint planning, backlog refinement, and daily stand-ups to ensure that testing considerations are addressed early and continuously. When faced with pressure to compromise on quality for speed, professionals should clearly articulate the risks, including potential regulatory noncompliance and the long-term impact on product stability and customer trust.